Any good teacher of this type of work is actively trying to put himself out of the job by getting you to trust your higher self. So without further ado, allow me to do my best to download about a decade's worth of yogic experience into you in 10 minutes or less. And to do that, let's pose some powerful questions that we're going to unpack in this video so that you can begin communicating and trusting your higher self's guidance every single time. So, what are the questions? Well, number 1, what is your higher self? Number 2, how does that higher self communicate with you? And finally, how do I know that I can trust its communication? Now, it's natural when we get into topics of the heart to ask the big questions. You've probably already realized that you're attracting a lot of spiritual information. And you may even be becoming obsessed with it, which is great. It's how it gets you, right? And this is awesome. We're trying to make sense of it all. And as we do, those of us with a very penetrative mind start asking deeper questions when things don't quite add up from our current understanding. Like, what's the difference between our higher self and God? Maybe even what's the difference between higher self and intuition? Perfectly valid questions, right? Because there's so much information out there, and at times it's hard to make sense of it all. And to be honest with you, it doesn't really seem like there's any consensus from everybody. But here's the thing. With grounded, down-to-earth spirituality, it's important to be true to yourself. Right? So long as the information you're receiving from within yourself is good, does it really matter whether it's coming from ascended beings, the archangels, the Council of Nine from the 8th dimension, or even God himself? Because a lot of this can very quickly become an ego trip. So let's pose our first question then. What is your higher self? See, in the spiritual community, there's a common belief that our higher self is a separate, almost divine entity out there, somewhere existing in some distant spiritual realm. This perspective, it paints a picture of separation, though, between me and my higher self, suggesting that this biological being here is somehow detached from my more wise counterpart in the sky. Now, I understand why this concept is appealing. It offers comfort, right? It presents our higher self as a celestial guide, a spiritual GPS, a source of wisdom that's seemingly beyond our everyday reach. It's an idea that provides direction and a sense of being cared for from above. But this view might actually be more of a constraint than a liberation, because it creates a split in us. It creates a divide. The truth is, our higher self isn't distant. It isn't external. It's you. Your intuition, your truest desires, and your deepest knowings. They're not distant echoes, but they're direct expressions of your higher self. This isn't a separate entity to be reached out to. It's the core of our own inner self. And by continuing to view our higher self as something out there or external, we risk overlooking the profound connection and wisdom that's already inherently ours. We might endlessly search the stars for guidance, not realizing that the answers lie inside of our own selves. The only question is, are we listening to our own inner guidance? And to answer that question, we're going to have to pose the second question, which is, how does the higher self communicate? You see, once upon a time I was heading to my mate's house, and all of a sudden this thought and feeling came up, and it was so strong and intense in me, but it came up from the inside. And what it said was, go and buy some beers and bring it to their house, my mate's house. And so, of course, as the good spiritual guy that I was, I did just that. And as I arrived at their house, they were having an argument, accusing me and all of his friends of drinking all of their alcohol. Yeah, super spiritual, right? But I never did that. I always brought my own. And here I am, showing up to the door with a case of alcohol in my hand for everybody to see. Lucky me. Crisis averted, right? Generally, the higher mind or the higher self, or what we call in our tradition the Vijnanamaya kosha, or the intuitive sheath, the intuitive body, it's going to speak to you through feeling, which is why we often say follow your feeling, or It's the feeling that matters, or feel your way through it. But also, this is why sometimes our feeling makes absolutely no logical sense. We may know that we need to get some specific work done or a deadline to meet, yet the feeling inside is to go for a walk, and the logical mind will question it because it's not the thing that seemingly, logically, next needs to be done. But you never know who you're going to meet on that walk. You never know what you may overhear in a conversation that you walk past that could help you with the work that you need, for example. See, feeling is our higher mind's guidance to us that this is the next best thing to be acted on next. Because our physical minds, they don't actually know. They're not designed to know what's next. Our egos were never designed to be the controller for life either. The mind is a tool, but it's also there to store what has happened, the past, in the form of memory. It can also plan, but it cannot tell you what will happen. The physical mind has no idea where this life is going. So how do I know I can trust the higher self's communication? Do you want to know a surefire way to guarantee that you never get hurt again? Well, to do this, you've got to know the difference between feeling and feelings. Feelings, in this example, are emotions or ego, anything that comes and goes. Feeling is that which communicates with us when we're silent, when we're still, and when we connect to our presence, or as we call it in our tradition, dynamic stillness. So, I have a question for you. Can you always trust your feelings, your emotions? Well, if you're honest with yourself, no, you can't, because they can mimic the intuition, but typically they're just a lot of our own fears from the past projected onto the present. And if you act out of these fears, then you do tend to hurt other people, and therefore by extension, yourself. But feeling, well, this is different. This is your higher self communicating with you, and it will always do it through feeling. Feeling is what moves you and draws you towards that which you're truly seeking. But it's not done on your ego's timing, so you have to become adept at reading and translating your feeling. If the communication feels like it's coming on a bubble of bliss, of ecstasy, or it feels light, then you can bet your bottom dollar that that's your intuition or your higher self talking to you. So you should blooming well listen and probably act on that information. But if it feels tight or contracted or highly charged, then it's likely feelings that's communicating with you, or your ego. And the likelihood is that you're going to hurt other people and get hurt in the process if you act on these things, because they're coming from insecurity and fear. But if you listen and act from feeling, which isn't coming from those things, it's coming from peace, from equanimity, from joy, you'll never get hurt again. So now you know how to listen to the communication of the higher self. We need to know how to get our energies to such a point where that communication becomes so clear you can't miss it. And we do that by raising our vibration. So in this video, we talk about the harsh truth about raising your vibration and some of the subtle side effects that might be caused around you as that happens. So if you're interested, you can watch that video right there.